Hello to whoever is watching this video. My name is Greta Heitman. I'm currently a senior at St. Mary's Academy, and this is my community service video to wrap up my 4 years of community service at St. Mary's. So when I was thinking about what I wanted to do for this video, I went through a lot of different ideas, some funny, some serious, and I settled on one important point that I really want to make, and that is, looking back, there's so much that I know now that I didn't know as a freshman, especially as an 8th grader coming into St. Mary's, looking forward to my 4 years of service. So I thought that the best way I could sort of encapsulate my 4 years of community service was to write a letter to my freshman self, which I will be reading now. Dear freshman Greta, I'm going to start by telling you where you are now. You are a senior in high school. You've spent 4 years volunteering to fulfill your community service requirements so you can graduate this spring. For your senior year service, you volunteered at Samaritan House in Denver. You've been volunteering there for 3 years now and you absolutely love it. You work specifically in the extended stay shelter, serving dinner to the residents there. A typical shift for you starts by arriving at the kitchen early to prep for different dishes that will be served at dinner, and afterwards standing on the line, helping to serve the meals to the residents for about 2 hours. That's your favorite part, because you're an awful chef. Your senior year especially, you got close with the Samaritan House staff, and they've helped you to understand the mission of Samaritan House. You've learned about their lives and had many conversations with Steve about his new truck, and with Christy about the latest crazy event that always seems to be happening downtown. You've also gotten to know the residents, who are individuals experiencing homelessness. They are families, women, veterans, and people with disabilities. You've spent hours hearing their stories, asking how their day was, and hearing about their incredible successes. Recently, the family floor reopened, so you've been getting to know the kids and enjoying the special feeling they bring back into the dining room after being closed for about a year. Senior year, you've learned that everyone has a story. The residents, the staff, the kids, and even yourself. You've learned that everyone's story is so incredibly different, but they are all tied together by your connection to the Samaritan House. Senior year, you also got a chance to do a shift in the Holy Rosary Women's Shelter. You served women who spent their entire day on the street. Holy Rosary was a very different feel from the rest of the shelter. It feels much more raw, much more real. It's the front line of the homelessness issue in Denver. There's no drug or alcohol testing, no screening, and any woman in Denver can come and stay the night if she needs to. It feels like you're doing the quick patch jobs instead of solving the greater issue that these women are facing. But you know, without the shelter, most of the women would be sleeping outdoors, in the cold, and in dangerous situations. The notable experiences from your service are those where residents have felt able to share their stories with you. During your senior year, you got to volunteer with a resident who was doing their kitchen day. He told you a bit about his life and what led him to where he was. He told you that he's a recovering alcoholic, but that isn't the part of the conversation you remember most. The part you remember most was him asking about your life and your plans for the future. You remember the two of you bonding over the fact that he's from New York, and you want to live there someday when you're older. Those are the interactions you remember. The ones where you get the privilege to hear other people's stories. You learned a lot in your senior year service. You learned to be grateful since you work with people who are possibly going through one of the worst times in their lives, but they never fail to see the good in their situations. They spend time with one another and are always incredibly grateful to have a meal and a safe place to stay the night. You learned that in order to truly grow, you have to be willing to put yourself in uncomfortable situations. You learned you have to be willing to have an open mind in every situation because you never know when a very important lesson might be presented to you. You've learned that everyone has a backstory. Everyone has a past that somehow influences where they are in the present and where they will go in the future. You learned not to put the spaghetti sauce too close to the edge of the counter, otherwise you might end up with some stains on your white shirt. Your life changed during your senior year service too. You got to be close to people who live completely different lives from your own. You've become more aware of the privileged bubble you live in. Being able to work with people experiencing homelessness has helped you realize that people are all just people at their core. They all have flaws and obstacles, but they also all have happiness and enjoy a good laugh every once in a while, yourself included. You've experienced a lot of growth at Samaritan House. Your first shift in October of your sophomore year, you remember being terrified. You've lived your whole life as a white, suburban, middle-class, private school girl, and you were entering a world that felt completely different from your own. But you came to realize that that world was not at all different from the one you were accustomed to. It looked a bit different from the outside, but at its core it was full of people just like you. You realized that people are full of dreams and ambitions and hope. Now when you enter the Samaritan House building, you greet the resident on door duty by name. And when you're on the line, you know not even to offer Sue the bread because she's gluten-free. And you make sure to ask Charlie how his knee is feeling. And the people there know you too. The biggest growth you've had over your 3 years has been forming relationships with people you're helping. It's knowing that you're not better than them in any way, shape, or form. The social issue that you've encountered working at Samaritan House has been homelessness. Currently in Colorado, 10,857 people are experiencing homelessness. That's 19 in 10,000 people in Colorado. The main causes of homelessness include a lack of affordable housing, health issues, which require large amounts of money, mental health issues, and escaping violence. So, you may ask yourself, what awareness did you gain? People affected by homelessness and poverty are still people, and society tends to dehumanize them and focus more on the big picture problems rather than on individual people. You came to realize that people are people regardless of what their lifestyle looks like or what situation they're in. It's been very humbling to put your own problems into perspective, because regardless of what you're worried about, you never have to worry about where you will stay the night or where your next meal will come from. Some possible solutions to homelessness include programs like Samaritan House, which help people get back on their feet and give them a safe place to live, as well as food, clothing, and the resources they need. Another possible solution is supporting the building of low-income housing developments, which help people who live in poverty have somewhere to stay that's not on the street. Finally, lowering unemployment rates and increasing the minimum wage can enable people to own their own homes, especially in the extremely expensive locations like Denver. Senior year has not been the only year that you've done community service. You've actually done it all 4 years. Now I'm going to give you an overview of what you've done. In 9th grade, you volunteered at Bessie's Hope in Denver. You weren't 16, so you couldn't volunteer with the senior citizens alone, and you ended up doing a lot of office work and volunteering at one bowling event. That work, unfortunately, wasn't very fulfilling because you didn't feel like you were really helping people. In sophomore year, you started volunteering at Samaritan House in Denver, and you've been volunteering there ever since. Sophomore year, you had a lot of trouble completing your hours. You weren't motivated to go volunteer, but eventually you did get them completed. In your junior year, something clicked, and you really started enjoying doing your service. You loved the people you worked with, and you had a really great time doing it. Overall, you've enjoyed doing your community service requirement more and more every year. After finding the right placement, you've been able to really connect with the people you're working with. Your service is giving you opportunities that you may have never gotten otherwise. You've learned how to be a good member of society, and you've learned how to be generous with your time and your skills. You've grown a lot during your community service requirement from St. Mary's. You've been forced into challenging, sometimes uncomfortable situations, which have expanded your view of humanity and of the work you've learned. And of the world you've learned that You've been forced into challenging and sometimes uncomfortable situations, which have expanded your view of humanity and the world. You learned that it's okay to make mistakes because there's more value in doing your best than in doing every single task correctly. You also learned how to be more outgoing, and you learned how to make conversations with people. Over your 4 years of community service, you learned things about yourself. You learned that you like to do good for others and make them happy, whether this means secretly giving a little kid an extra cookie or having a conversation with a resident about where they're from and what their life is like. Seeing the smile on people's faces is an addictive feeling. You've learned how valuable a smile can be, whether it's yourself giving one to someone else or receiving one yourself. You like knowing that you've made someone's day a little better, even for a second. When you think about what your service will look like going forward in your life, you come to realize what kind of service you do enjoy doing. You like interacting with people you're helping. You like getting your hands dirty and doing work that will really help the people around you. You like volunteering in a setting where you can get to know the people by talking to them. And you like feeling like you're meeting an actual need. You plan on volunteering at Samaritan House in the summers and during the school year if you attend college in Colorado. You plan on finding a service site close to the college you do attend because you feel like it helps you connect with the community and the world around you. Through your community service, you've come to really respect the Loretto values, and they're something you'll carry with you even after you've left St. Mary's Academy. The first value is respect. You saw respect by starting to understand that the people you're helping's situation is much deeper and more complex than it's often portrayed by society. And that's helped you respect the people you serve a lot more. You've come to respect the people you work with as human beings rather than statistics or societal issues. The second value is faith. The connections you've made with people you've been serving have helped you to really see a higher power in the universe. Justice is the third value, and you see this in the fight that each of the residents puts up to get back on their feet. Each of them is working against a system that is made to hold them back, and you thought that was very inspiring. Finally, community. You have found a community at Samaritan House. You got to meet people you would have otherwise not have, and you think that's a really beautiful thing. As far as spirituality goes, you've been able to reconnect with the best part of your religion and your faith. You've been able to work with people who are so different from yourself, who are also in a Catholic Charities organization. Over your 4 years in high school, you've come to realize that there are a lot of things that you don't agree with about the church. So it's nice to have a chance to experience the good that Catholic Charities does. You feel more connected to a higher power than ever when you're doing good for the people around you. You feel more in tune with the universe when you're doing service. I hope that you continue to use these things throughout the rest of your life. Love, Senior Year Greta. So, that was my letter. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.